Emmanuel Macron of France is warning Europe that if they continue to follow the direction of the United States, that the EU will die.
Europe is no more the top priority of the US. The US top priority is US, which is normal and fair. The second top priority is China. And for the rest, it depends on the moment. They are a super loyal and reliable partner on Ukraine. Will it last? I don't know. The EU is not the priority of the US. And this is why part of the wake-up call period of time we are living, and part of what we have to completely reshape, is our defense and security strategy. We are part of NATO, no discussion. We are a strong ally of the US, no discussion. But we have to de-risk our model from the US agenda.
Emmanuel Macron is finally realizing that the United States don't give a damn about them. This is huge that leaders are starting to say this because Europe has been following the direction of the United States empire blindly my entire life. Let's be real, the EU was essentially a glorified arm of United States foreign policy. Emmanuel Macron even saying this reveals how the United States lost a ton of influence. This also reveals how absolutely unhinged the United States has been over the last decade, considering they lost Emmanuel Macron of France. Don't get me wrong, Emmanuel Macron is a corrupt piece of shit, but at least he realized the United States was using him before many other European leaders did. Meanwhile, Germany is in complete shambles as they destroy their economy, their energy and industrial base, following the direction of the United States. The United States is crumbling as we are witnessing the rise of BRICS and the resistance, and it will be wise of Europe to acknowledge and adapt to this fact. So apparently, Israel knew about a potential Hamas attack over a year ago. Netanyahu has some explaining to do. In a 40-page document codenamed Jericho Wall, it was outlined in great detail exactly how Hamas planned to launch their attack. Israeli military officials blew it off though, because they believed that the plan was aspirational and they believed that Hamas could never actually pull it off. Hold up, let me get this straight. Israel will have us believe that Hamas is all-knowing, all-powerful, has control of all the hospitals, control of the UN, control of journalists, but they can't execute a simple military operation. I don't know, to me it seems like Israel wanted this to happen so they can have an excuse to slaughter a bunch of Palestinian children. I need someone to explain to me why we would give Israel the benefit of the doubt at this point. This is an embarrassing revelation because the Israeli government is even losing their own settler colonial people after being faced with corruption trials, after facing mass protests last year. This was Benjamin Netanyahu's moment to lead the Israeli people on glorious conquest against the Palestinians, and his approval rating is 4%. Bruh, George W. Bush Jr. had an approval rating over 85% after 9/11. If you're a leader, a disaster like this is supposed to help you. Now Israelis are about to learn that Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel knew about potential attack and did nothing. Now, just wait until Israelis learn about all the citizens that was killed by their own government on October 7th.
What's poppin'? What's poppin', my friends, my family? Welcome to another banger week of Revolutionary Blackout Network. I guess this stream is, what should I call it? The October 7th propaganda sanctuary stream. Today's going to be one of the most insufferable days probably ever in politics. So this is the hour. This is the stream where you can avoid all the noise. And I've been preparing for all year, getting ready for the insane propaganda we are going to be faced with. And the narrative around October 7th has been utterly debunked. But despite that, we still have Kamala Harris, Democrats, Tim Walz spreading lies about October 7th. Now, this is basic critical thinking. If Hamas was as bad as the establishment told you that they was, why would they have to lie about Hamas? Why would they have to lie about October 7th? I never, show me one time, you guys, a lot of people consider me an anti-American radical. I think I'm a patriot in a lot of ways. If you want to root out the corruption of this country, if you want to provide for your neighbors and you criticize the government for not doing so, I would say I'm more patriotic than the average flag-waving red and blue scum. But in my criticisms of the United States, have I ever told a lie? Did I lie to you guys about the war crimes committed by the United States? Do we have to lie about like the My Lai massacre, for example? Do I have to lie about Operation Condor and the wage against the global working class? Did we have to lie about the devastating effects of economic sanctions? We got receipts and receipts on days because we don't have to lie about our enemies. The fact that people still have to pretend that there was mass rapes on October 7th. The fact that they still even get the number wrong. The fact that people don't even bring up the fact that the IDF and Israel engaged in the Hannibal Directive. They murdered their own people as well. And these are facts that even the IDF acknowledge. And given the direction by her AIPAC handler husband, Kamala Harris rushed to tweet this out. And there's almost no reason to me even to read this. Like you already see the 1,200 innocent people. Tim Walz said 4. Like they getting the numbers wrong. They say different people every time. Like women raped on the side of the road. Yeah, Biden that repeat the 40 beheaded babies lie. They repeating the lie about rape. If Hamas is so evil, why do they have to lie about their deeds? We debunk this nonsense over and over. This is Bushware. This is Bushware calling out Kamala. I gotta be careful, man, because I don't want to get us banned on YouTube. I gotta be very careful with this stream. Kamala's statements on October 7th, 2024 marks the death knell of the Democratic Party. Lies beginning to end. Hezbollah debunked by Israeli journalists on casualties, consequences, and sickening rape. She was already covered in blood. She will evermore be naked with infamy and defeat. You guys understand that these lies are only designed to justify the brutal slaughter of the Palestinian people. That's why it's extremely important for us to debunk these lies. This is why I tweeted a long time ago, and this is why, like, even just basic critical thinking, let alone the fact that the IDF admits it, let alone the Haaretz Israeli media, you have no confirmed, you have no evidence that there was any mass rape. And I explained many times before that it's the colonizers who engage in rape. It's the people who have control. If you're an occupier and you have control and you are able to slow things down, you are able to impose your will on the population, that is the dynamic that leads to mass rape. On October 7th, do you guys know that hundreds of Hamas fighters died that day? You guys know that? They had Apache helicopters raining hellfire indiscriminately above, killing Israelis as well. You had settlers, and these are a lot of settlers who was some of the quote-unquote innocent casualties, ones who are armed, who was shooting at Hamas fighters. You had Hamas fighters who trained with each other, was brothers and comrades. They are witnessing their friends die. In Jericho Wall, while covering in the hotspot. It was revealed how Hamas planned this attack. We know how Hamas was able to engage in October 7th. It was a very particular and timed operation. Whether you like it or not, any operation where you got to take hostages in enemy territory, it requires an insane amount of timing. There were checkpoints that had to be made. But what Zionists will have you believe is that as you have Israeli tanks shooting and killing Hamas fighters, as you have Hamas soldiers being murdered, in the most high-pressure situation these people have ever seen in their entire life, the moment that they trained for, the most important moment of the resistance, they was willing to throw it all away so they can engage in rate breaks. They took a timeout, and in their plan, they ran out and they planned the timeout that was needed. By then you will have, you need 20 minutes to engage in the rape here. Does that sound like that makes sense? All this death and murder going on. And this is the racist trope. And this is why white Americans believe in it. This is why Europeans believe in it. Because they believe black and brown people, Arabs, Muslims, anyone who's essentially the other, they believe their men are sexually impure. They believe that they engaged in rape that they was told during Jim Crow. So they will assume that any Palestinian, no matter what situation, they are so overwhelmed with sexual emotions they can't control that even on a battlefield, they will engage in rape. So in order for you to believe the absurd lie of mass rapes on October 7th, you have to be an insane anti-Palestinian racist to believe that. They take Viagra. That's the Viagra super soldiers lie they told about Gaddafi in Libya. They training super soldiers that take Viagra so they can be ready to rape at a moment's notice. And white people believed it because they will believe anything that is told or that is said about a non-white European. And that is how they are able to get away with mass war crimes. We don't believe it. It's very important to debunk this propaganda. We're risking it all this stream. Let's go to this one. We have Ozzy Krusak join us today. You had Kamala Harris that was given the direction to tweet out and spread Israeli propaganda by her AIPAC handlers. Her AIPAC handler husband probably was responsible for this. She's not the only one, bro. The timeline is completely insufferable today. That's why this is the October 7th propaganda sanctuary stream, I like to call it. Tulsi Gabbard got the call. So look at the time. She tweeted this at 6:07 a.m. And I know some people will say that, oh, don't you know that Tulsi was planning October 7th tweets? But I planned a few tweets. I scheduled a few tweets out in advance. You will usually tweet it, like if I schedule a tweet at 9, I'll schedule it at 9. If Tulsi was to schedule this tweet at 6, she would schedule it at 6. This is not a scheduled tweet because you don't schedule a tweet to come out at 6:07. That's random as hell. So Tulsi Gabbard was given the order by her AIPAC handlers to wake the hell up and send a tweet. Hamas's horrific attack on Israel 1 year ago today that took the lives of approximately 1,200 Israelis. Why can't you guys talk about this without lying? Many of the people who died was IDF. They don't talk about that. Let alone the 100 Israelis that was murdered by Apache helicopters and by the Hannibal Directive. It's a stark reminder of the ongoing short and long-term threat of Islamist terrorism. You guys see how Zionists can't help but make it about religion, even though it has nothing to do with religion? What about the Palestinian Christians, Tosi? What about the Christians in Lebanon, Tosi? What about the anti-Zionist Jewish people? What about the diverse Middle East that stands united against Zionism? Then she says Kamala Harris refused to utter radical Islamic terrorism. The ill people, the mentally brain-rotted people on the right, their message has been, and I've been watching Fox News, I've been watching the messaging of the right as Biden and Harris proceed to give Israel everything they wanted. It was revealed that the Biden administration gave Israel permission to attack humanitarian aid. As all this is being revealed, the most mentally ill, brain-broken people in politics are the MAGA Republicans and the Tulsi Gabbard Republicans that are pretending that Kamala Harris is not doing everything on behalf of Israel. They're pretending that Kamala is doing the bidding of Iran. Here is Kamala Harris on 60 Minutes asking about, she was asked about Israeli influence in the United States, if the United States lack influence on Israel as well. Listen to this garbage ass response.
We supply Israel with billions of dollars in military aid. Mm-hmm. And yet Prime Minister Netanyahu seems to be charting his own course. The Biden-Harris administration has pressed him to agree to a ceasefire. He's resisted. You urged him not to go into Lebanon. He went in anyway. He has promised to make Iran pay for the missile attack, and that has the potential of expanding the war. Does the U.S. have no sway over Prime Minister Netanyahu?
You guys understand that this framing is bullshit. Not only is it framing bullshit, you guys must understand that Biden and Blinken, more Blinken than Biden, because Biden, he doesn't even know where he's at right now. Every step of the way, the genocide in Gaza has gone exactly as planned by the Biden administration. The Biden administration provided targeting for Israeli soldiers. They gave them 2,000-pound buster bombs, and you think they didn't know what Israel was planning to do with that? There's the bombshell report that I covered yesterday. Or I think that was Saturday, actually. Blinken blocking reports of Israel blocking aid to Gaza because it was 100% okay with the strategy of blocking aid. So inherently, the question alone is bullshit, but Kamala's still going to screw it up.
The aid that we have given Israel allowed Israel to defend itself against 200 ballistic missiles that were just meant to attack the Israelis and the people of Israel. And when we think about the threat that Hamas, Hezbollah presents, Iran, I think that it is without any question our imperative to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself against those kinds of attacks. Now, the work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel.
I think it skipped her original answer. Let me go back.
Go into Lebanon. He went in anyway. He has promised to make Iran pay for the missile attack, and have
Israel allowed Israel to defend itself.
I had to listen to that again because she doesn't even attempt to answer the question. I was like, hold up. What question are you? She asking she was asked, does the United States have influence on Israel? For one, I gotta let you guys know that we gave Israel everything they needed to defend themselves. She is not allowed to have a single thought on this issue that is not AIPAC approved. I had to go back to the question because it's a complete non-answer. It's essentially an answer swearing loyalty to the state of Israel. but let's continue.
Itself against 200 ballistic missiles that were just meant to attack the Israelis and the people of Israel. And when we think about the threat that Hamas, Hezbollah presents, Iran, I think that it is without any question our imperative to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself against them.
Her answer has nothing to do with what she was asked. Like, this is, how can anyone vote or support for such a robotic candidate? Like, someone like this is so scary because they have no ideology. They're willing to say and do whatever it takes to maintain power, to achieve power. And you think she has any thesis on how to end the conflict in the Middle East? No, she's going to turn the decision-making over to her version of Anthony Blinken. She's going to be a puppet in a suit the same way that Joe Biden is, even though Joe Biden is completely broken-brained. But let's continue because we still got to get to 10 Walz.
Those kinds of attacks. Now, the work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles, which include the need for humanitarian aid, the need for this war to end, the need for a deal to be done, which would release the hostages and create a ceasefire. And we're not going to stop in terms of putting that pressure on Israel and in the region, including Arab leaders.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
He's like, you saw how confused he was? He was confused like me, like, hold up. That had nothing to do with the fuck I just asked you, but let's continue.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things.
She sounds dumber than Trump. Trump is horrific, but at least Trump has an ideology. How can liberals mock Trump? If you watch late night news, Stephen Colbert, Stephen Myers, all these fucking people, they mock Trump and they pretend that Trump is the dumbest person in politics. This person is easily dumber. I see ordinary Democrats. Like, you guys should check out the video with Jasmine Crockett and Glenn Greenwald where she was talking about Israel, Ukraine. These average Democrats sound dumber than fucking Trump, bro, to me. And that's just me, I guess. I don't know how anyone could ever vote for this. If you vote for this, you're a cult. Your brain is completely washed if you support this.
Prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
And that joke of a journalist, he gave up even asking because she would not give him the answer to the question about the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu behaved the exact opposite way that the Biden administration stated goals were avoiding a regional conflict, achieving a ceasefire. And the journalist is trying to ask a tough question, saying, hey, man, you guys' policies are ineffective of reining in Netanyahu. She doesn't even try. And then the journalist, after trying twice, he gives up. Which is why he got the interview in the first place.
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
What are you talking about? That had nothing to do with the question. I'm going to play it again because I know I stopped it. I want you guys to see the whole thing in full context. After this guy was begging her to answer the goddamn question about Benjamin Netanyahu, she then pivots to something completely different. This guy is a broken spirit.
See for what needs to happen in the region.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
Are you drunk? Are you high? Are you able to comprehend questions? Are you enabled to comprehend what a question is? That has nothing to do. For one, This is AIPAC nonsense. The Israeli people have no respect for the American people. The Israelis mock Americans. The Israelis want to strip the free speech rights of Americans who disagree with sending their taxpayer money to the settler colonial regime. There is no greater enemy of Americans than Israelis. Israelis, they want to impose a police state which is meant to rob Americans of our rights. They don't have no friendly relationship with us, but it's not even supposed to make sense. This is Kamala Harris saying anything she can to skip over this topic. She want to talk about abortion, other nonsense bullshit issues that the president had no control over. She tried her best to autopilot this answer, this segment, and she's not even trying. And the same with the black journalists. And despite Kamala saying everything that Israel wants her to say, despite her doing everything what Israel wants them to do, you have these mentally brain dead morons on the right. I'm sorry to name call, but what else how can I classify these people who pretend that Kamala Harris is a secret agent of Hamas? What else can you describe these MAGA morons who's pretending that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will support fucking Palestinian liberation? U.S. spends a record $17.9 billion on military aid since last October 7th. U.S. to give Israel compensation if it hits susceptible targets in Iran. They're going to give them a bonus. They're going to give them a war crime bonus. They're going to give them a snack. Hey guys, please don't do anything that plunges to global war, or we give you a snack. We give you a little war crime. This is what the Biden administration is doing, and the Republicans are pretending that she's not fucking diehard Israel. And Tim Walz had this interview on Fox News where they was grilling him, pretending that he's appeasing Iran, appeasing Hezbollah. These people have lost their fucking mind. All of them. The entire two-party duopoly. So Tim Walz went on Fox News and then proceeded to sound exactly like Dick Cheney. This is the guy that Crystal Ball was decided for. This is the person that Kyle Kalinske was praising. This is the person the Vanguard was praising. These are the people that the Marianne Williamson supporters, the fake progressive left, I told you guys that they will support Democrats when the election comes, and they've been telling their audience, Crystal Ball, Kyle Kalinske, the Vanguard, they've been telling their audience that this guy is progressive. They were like, hey man, do you know Tim Walz is essentially the next Bernie Sanders? True in the sense that they both support genocides and they're frauds. But ever since I even had my eye on Tim Walz, this guy has been the most unhinged, Zionist, bootlicking, neocon I have ever seen. This is the guy that the progressive media apparatus is trying to paint as a win for the working class.
Okay, so I want to pick up where Alexis left off there in the Middle East, because you were asked
right now. Israel's right to defend.
Okay, so I want to pick up where Alexis left off there in the Middle East, because you were asked in the debate the other night a question about whether or not you would support a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran. You didn't really get to an answer on that. So this administration continues to call for Israel to moderate its response after being attacked by Iran. Do you now think that Israel has a right to either strike?
Meanwhile, it is the Biden administration that has been pushing for the Israel incursion to Lebanon because they want regime change. So the dumb liberal media is repeating the bullshit. And Ozzy, I see you, brother. I'm going to introduce you here soon. We have our amazing guest, Ozzy Krosak, will be joining us. I'll introduce you here very soon, my brother. So the dumb liberal media is like, oh my God, why can't Biden restrain Benjamin Netanyahu? They trying to do everything they can to restrain. Meanwhile, the dummies on the right are pretending that, oh my God, Israel want to wage this war, but Biden's stopping them. You guys see how no matter what side of the duopoly it is, it's filled with fucking idiots who program their supporters to be moronic. They want a dumb working class. So I'll play this video, and there's a video where Tim Walz said he straight up want censorship for people who are against genocide. But here's Tim Walz sounding no different than Dick Cheney. Remember, Liz and Dick Cheney endorsed the Democratic Party not because they had Trump derangement syndrome, despite what most people think. Liz Cheney actually don't have Trump derangement syndrome. She's supporting Kamala Harris because she supports Liz Cheney foreign policy. Now let's listen to this clip, and then I'll get Ossie Kosak in here after this clip.
Oil facilities, nuclear facilities, Israel to moderate its response after being attacked by Iran. Do you now think that Israel has a right to either strike oil facilities, nuclear facilities? What's your position on that?
Well, look, let's remember how this started, and we're approaching tomorrow a tragic anniversary. Hamas terrorists murdered over 1,200 innocent Israelis, 46 Americans.
Here is AIPAC sponsor statement, just like Kamala Harris, just AIPAC sponsor statement, but I'll let it continue.
Took hostages. We have been clear. Israel has the right to defend itself. We've always stood in that position. We need the hostages returned, and we need to bring an end to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But again, the point is it's Iran is at the heart of this, and their proxies that bring disruption throughout the region. That's why being in
it's Iran that's causing disruptions, not Israel that is engaging in a whole ass genocide. That's what he wants you to believe.
Situation Room as Vice President was working with Israelis to repel the attack we saw this week. They tried it back in April, the same thing. And that's the point of being and boxing Iran in. President Trump tore up the nuclear deal that moved Iran closer to a nuclear weapon. He also allowed Iran to shoot down an American aircraft in international airspace with a tweet. And when Iranian missiles fell on U.S. troops, he called it a headache when it was traumatic brain injury. Just to be clear, we have always said we reserve the right to protect American troops, our allies in the region, and that there is consequences for Iran. So what you're seeing right now is the ability to work with our allies, the ability to make sure Iran does not further, and every administration has dealt with them for 45 years. Now it's to make sure, and there has never been a question, Israel has the right to defend itself, and we stand with them to do that. But we need to bring this to a conclusion.
Does that include a strike on Iran's nuclear or oil facilities?
Specific operations will be dealt with at the time, but being very clear on this, Iran, there was consequences for what they do. That's what's happening right now. Israel's right to defend itself is not in question.
Just another AIPAC sponsor puppet. And I want to, before I play this clip, we can bring our guests in, because here we're going to see this new trend. Well, I wouldn't say new trend. I guess that's not the best way to explain it, but we are seeing a new revived push towards censorship. And now here's Tim Walz openly saying that he don't support the free speech right of people fighting against Israel. So I'll play this, and then I'm gonna get Ossie to respond to this, because I'm gonna play this in this entirety, and then I'll get you to respond.
Okay, you said in a radio interview that anti-Israel protesters were speaking out, quote, for all the right reasons. You know that some of them are carrying Hamas flags, some of them are calling for the extermination of the Jewish state. Do you want to clarify your praise for that?
Well, I'm certainly not talking about them. I'm talking about the people who understand that we have to end the humanitarian crisis, but they understand we need to return the hostages, bring peace to the region. Look, I will always defend people's rights to First Amendment, but that's not the folks I'm talking about.
So Tim Walz, just like Kamala Harris, just like Hillary Clinton, as I'm about to show you guys here very soon, you have this extreme push for censorship, imposing on the rights of Americans to peacefully protest, as well engage in the right to journalism, freedom of speech. It's a horrific authoritarian crackdown. With that, so I want to introduce our guests for our next segment here. There's quite a bit that I want to discuss with you today. We have amazing geopolitical analyst and independent journalist Ossie Kosak joining us. I want to get your thoughts on this topic that we're discussing right now regarding Western censorship. You have Rachel Blevins, who her entire YouTube channel was just taken down, we're seeing this attack on not just journalists, but particularly journalists who are exposing the war in Ukraine. So I want to get your thoughts on this war on free speech, the war on journalism. To get started, thank you for joining us, Ozzy Kosak.
Thanks very much, Nick. It's a pleasure to join you. Definitely, we see an escalation in approach to the US election of censorship, and only X really is the only real platform, X and Telegram, who are immune to the Kamala Biden regime's censorship attempts. You'll notice that any accounts on YouTube or Meta who are pro Kamala Harris or pro Biden or pro Zelensky, they'll never get shut down. In fact, it's the opposite. They'll actually get boosted, and you have these accounts on YouTube promoting Zelensky who are making rubbish content but getting millions of
I think Kyle Kalinske and the Vanguard are the two best examples of what you're talking about, Ozzy, because Kyle Kalinski's channel was dead. The Vanguard channel was dead after their debate with Aaron Mate, and then they became vote blue no matter who, Kamala supporters, and all of a sudden they've been boosted by the algorithm. Just to back up your point, but go ahead, Ozzy.
Yeah, that's absolutely, and that's what we're up against. Well, thankfully, X and Elon Musk are very, very staunchly against Kamala. We know that Elon has been promoting the payment of $47 to people in certain states to register themselves. Look, it's clear that Trump needs to win, and he should win. And this is, in all honesty, this is not really an election. This is an IQ test to see if Americans are clever enough to pick the right candidate. I mean, Trump, whether you like him or not, at least he looks like a president, he walks like a president, he talks like a president. I wouldn't trust Kamala Harris to operate a photocopying machine. I mean, look at her. It's a disaster. She doesn't command respect, and she's in no position to potentially, if she becomes president, she's in no position to negotiate with world leaders such as Xi Jinping of China, Vladimir Putin of Russia. I mean, could you imagine Vladimir Putin sitting down with Kamala Harris and talking business? What would she say to him? She would just be laughing and hysterically and trying to look for a cue to read on her teleprompter. And this is not someone who can solve the world's problems. The world is a dangerous place at the moment. We've got World War III, Middle East is in turmoil. There's war, Iran, Israel, imminent strike by Israel and Iran any moment now, any minute now could occur. The situation with Russia, Ukraine. And we need a strong leader like Trump. And it's not election interference from the side for people such as myself to point this out and suggest that. It's common sense. It's not interference. It's common sense. But interference is probably what Kamala Harris's backers are doing, because we can see all the big corporate giants, all of the globalist corporations. Who are they sponsoring? That's right. They're not sponsoring Trump. They're sponsoring Kamala. And she's got a huge money. She's got, I think it's 5-1 in terms of her advantage in funding. All the globalist groups, all the lobby groups, the prison lobby groups. And this is one thing which is very, very dangerous for Americans, especially Americans of different demographics, including the black demographic. Kamala Harris will increase the amount of Americans going to prison, because one of her major sponsors is the prison lobby, the private prison lobby. Don't forget who Kamala Harris was. She was a district attorney. That's where she started her career. And under her, the percentage rate of black Americans who were incarcerated skyrocketed. And now the private prison lobby, they're very powerful, they're very rich. They are one of the major donors to Kamala's campaign. And how is Kamala going to repay them if she wins the election? Of course, she's going to create such policies and enact such laws to put more people in jail. And then, unfortunately, it's not going to be people who haven't been to jail and are going to go to jail for the first time. It's going to be similar to what she had with the 3 strikes and you're out. So she's going to target those people for small misdemeanors, for small crimes, things like that. She's going to send them to prison. So literally, it's a matter of life and death for many people out there. And I really want to say to everybody watching and listening is I hope that the majority of black Americans realize this and they vote for Trump. We've seen Blacks for Trump, hashtag trending on Twitter, going viral, and it's really, really important that Kamala does
I
not
agree
win.
with a lot of the sentiments you said. The only thing I disagree with, especially as someone who's living in the heart of empire, because Trump is a sellout too. I think Black Americans and I think the working class, we need to form our own third party and overthrow the oligarchs, because unfortunately, Donald Trump is going to do the same bidding of the Zionist regime. In fact, he's been saying insane things, saying he's going to punish countries that pursue de-dollarization, which is only going to push the de-dollarization agenda even further and even faster. Now, like I said, I agree with a lot of what you said, because I think Kamala winning would be dire. I think it's actually very, very dire if Kamala wins. So trust me, I'm not pushing back on that at all. I think it's horrific if she wins. We cannot give a mandate to the ruling class to commit genocide. So I agree with you 100% that Kamala is horrific. She can't win, but Trump is going to sell out the American working class. He already palling around with Sheldon Adelson and people design this regime calling for war with Iran. But I definitely appreciate your perspective. Anything else you want to add?
I agree with your point, and that's the problem we have in Australia, where I am at the moment. I'm born in Australia, but I've got Russian background, so I'm very patriotic to Russia also. But I look at Australia, and many of us in Australia, we suffer from the same situation that you just mentioned, the duopoly. It's two parties, two choices, and there's no choice, and both of them are the same. And unless there is a third party or a third force, but that doesn't look very likely. It's impossible that that's going to happen in time for this next election in 30 days' time. But what your point you're making there on Trump and Kamala and their attitude to the genocide in Gaza against the Palestinians, although both of them are very pro Israel Defense Force, we've seen both of them and both of their administrations. It's basically a win-win for Israel. Either one, Kamala or Trump, Israel is happy. They're set, so they can fund both sides, back both sides. It doesn't really matter. They're going to still be okay. That they've got a very, very powerful lobby in the United States, a very strong hold on U.S. politics. But there is one but: the role of Russia in the Middle East as a mediator and as a power broker. And Trump can speak to Russia and they can make deals. Kamala can't speak to Russia. Kamala can't speak to China. Kamala can't speak to anyone. Trump can speak. He can fly literally to North Korea, meet with Kim Jong-un and have a laugh and shake his hand and sort things out. He can go and fly to Moscow, meet Putin. That's what he'll do if he wins. And I think that we'll be looking at a situation where Trump and Putin will meet and they will sort everything out, because Putin is not going to give up on Palestine. Putin's not going to make a deal with Trump and say, listen, let's fix Zelensky, let's fix Ukraine, settle that conflict, and then allow Palestine and Lebanon to continue being bombarded. Putin won't abandon his allies in the Middle East, in the Arab world, because Iran has been very good to Russia. Russia's been very good to Iran. They've been working very closely. Syria has been very close to Russia. Russia saved Syria from ISIS. Russia has big bases in Syria. They spend a lot of missiles, a lot of their troops in Syria. So Russia's got very strong influence in the Middle East. And if there's going to be a meeting, for example, Trump wins, he meets with Putin, I'm pretty sure that they would sort everything out in one go. In fact, in a few hours, over one lunch, they can literally sort each region out and say, you do this here, you pull back here, we'll pull back there, we'll stop this, if you stop that, if you stop that regime, we'll stop this regime. It'd be like a game of chess, because this is what the world needs. We don't have that at the moment. There's no communication. Biden has never spoken to Putin. Why would Putin speak to Biden anyway? Biden can't hold a conversation. Kamala can't hold a conversation. These are not the people who should be in charge of the world. And there are over 1 million Russian Israelis in Israel, and the Russian government warned them to leave. The Russian ambassador suggested that all Russians should leave. And this announcement came hours after the Israeli Air Force bombed targets in the vicinity of the Russian base in Syria. So it was almost basically like Israel bombing Russia, not directly, but almost. And that was the catalyst which led to this Russian announcement to evacuate Russian citizens from Israel. But at the same time, I think Russia is going to play a very important role in forming peace in the Middle East, because there's one leader, there's one country which is respected by all of them over there, and that is Vladimir Putin, simply.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on that because that's something I wanted to ask you about because I saw the story. I put it up because I saw you mention it regarding Russia asking their citizens to leave Israel, and I wanted to ask you about your thoughts about the upcoming because apparently Israel is pushing hard to attack nuclear sites, and the Western media has been completely delusional. Like, guys, you have no idea the torture I put myself through watching the coverage on CNN and Fox News on this. They are pretending that Israel is going to wipe the floor with Iran. And I point out how Israel is a population of 9 million, Iran is a population of 88 million. They are going to rely on the United States to fight this war with us. But with Russia and apparently the Arab world showing support for the Palestinian cause, I'm very curious about what your take on this is and what Russia may do. What do you like? Because Russia, as you explained earlier, have this very close relationship with Iran, which the West has been lamenting. How do you see this playing out? What do you predict going to happen probably in the next few weeks with Israel pushing this retaliation with Iran, and how will Russia respond?
Israel has a history of being successful in its wars against the Arab nations, even when it's up against multiple nations, and they've had that experience in the 70s and so forth. The Arab-Israeli wars, there's a few of them, but they had an advantage back then. They had a stronger air force, and they were up against countries which didn't have missiles and drones. Now in 2024, everything changes. Everything changes. Iran now is extremely strong. Iran has probably in the top 3 of the world. It leads the world in missiles and drones. Iran has been preparing for this for decades and decades. And this is not an Arab-Israeli war of the 70s. This is a country, Iran, who have underground facilities, underground missiles, underground bases. And Iran are not mucking around. They're actually very, very serious. Their whole country's ideology is to fight Israel if necessary. And although I don't think Iran will go out of its way to do anything rash or aggressive, I think actually Iran's missile strike, the recent strike where over 400 missiles hit Israel, I think that was actually very measured. 400 missiles and only 2 people died. What does that tell you? When have the Americans ever launched 400 missiles and 2 people died? Never, right? That tells you that Iran was intentionally hitting targets in the desert. They were hitting non-civilian targets, non-human targets. And they were basically showing Israel, look at what we can do. Now that you know what we can do, the next one is going to be much worse if you continue. And Iran's not bluffing. Iran has the missiles. And I think that's why the Americans have asked Israel not to retaliate, because they can't afford a major, major war. America is not so strong anymore in terms of its military. Its morale is low. They've lost a few conflicts in a row. They lost Iraq. They lost Afghanistan.
Yeah,
They don't have that advantage as they used to. When we think of America as being a country, a military power with an advantage, we think of aircraft carriers and helicopters and Tomahawk missiles. But guess what? An aircraft carrier now is just a target. One cheap missile can take out a big ship, or a cheap drone can take out a big ship. You've got Yemen, you've got Iran. And the reason I say that is because Russia learned that the hard way. When the missile cruiser, the Moskva, was sunk, no one expected that. It was a very expensive, very state-of-the-art, huge missile cruiser, and taken out by anti-ship missiles. Now, Iran has plenty and plenty of missiles. And Iran's a country that has, in that regard, from an ideological perspective, nothing to lose. They're happy to fight to the end. So that makes Iran very, very, you could say, dangerous for Israel and America. But Israel has a lot to lose. America has a lot to lose. And no one in America right now, in the Biden administration, no one is ready to commit to a war 30 days out from the election. So I think, although we're all sitting on the edge of our seats, are waiting for Israel to strike back, and there's been talk that Israel will hit Iran's nuclear sites. In particular, there's a nuclear site, Iran's largest nuclear reactor, in the south of Iran. But if they hit that, that means the nuclear fallout, the radiation, will go on Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, all the other countries, and that means that all the other countries are then going to go against Israel. And these Arab countries, again, these are not the Arabs of the 70s and the 60s. These are Arab countries who have trillions of dollars in oil wealth and revenue. And even those countries who are not fighting, they can provide funding to those countries who are willing to fight. Yemen is willing to fight. And there are other Arab countries who are willing to fund Yemen or fund Iran or fund whoever. So it's a dangerous situation. Of course, no one wants the death of Israel or the death of Jews or civilians or anything like that, because that's exactly what the pro-Israeli media want to do. They want to play the victim card. No one cares about them. Don't touch other people. No one's going to touch you. Iran's not going to bomb you for no reason. But if you start attacking Iran, if you start invading Lebanon, Iran's going to do something about it. And you know what? Iran has every right to protect itself, protect its allies. People say, oh, Israel has a right to protect itself. Well, why does that only apply to Israel? Why don't the Palestinians and the Lebanese and the Syrians and the Iranians have a right to protect themselves? So at the end of the day, let's hope that nothing happens in the next few days. Let's hope Trump wins. And I know Trump's bad as well. Kamala's bad from the perspective of a duopoly. But at least then we can have some conversations. They'll sit down with Vladimir Putin in Moscow. They'll have a nice long lunch, have a nice relaxing afternoon together, and they'll talk business and they'll sort the world out. These are two men who can sort the world out. Kamala will never be able to do that. Biden will never be able to do that. No one takes him seriously. So that's my prediction on what's going to occur. So in saying that, I wish for everyone to vote for Trump. What can I say? I want peace. That's why I want Trump. If we get Kamala, it's World War III. It's a disaster.
Yeah, and I understand why, because you're not the first person outside the United States who told me they wanted Trump to win. We had Che Boyles. He also said he wanted Trump to win because you guys view them to be similar on Palestine, but they got to get peace in Ukraine. My prediction is I don't think Trump's going to do it, man. That's the only. He's a great campaigner. He's a great politician, but I think he's going to fold to the pressures of the war machine. But let's hope you're right instead. But I'm telling you, I know how the duopoly works. I know Trump's class loyalty, and I understand that you want to be optimistic that Trump's going to say, but I promise you, he's not, man. I promise you, he's going to continue the wars. He's not going to change the establishment. But let's move on to super chats, and I want to ask you about. Update on Russia and Ukraine, because there's been a lot going on with Gaza, the Israel-Iran war. So I actually want to get an update on that. But I'm gonna read a few super chats real quick. Thank you for the $5. Nick, please react to streamers like Walz. Oh, Jesus Christ. And Destiny saying FEMA funding got cut by Republicans. Oh, Jesus Christ. Why doesn't that surprise me? They got what they deserved. For one, I definitely can't do that because Boston Destiny is too much for me, man. That's too much for me to handle. We spend all this money in Ukraine. We're going to talk about that here very soon. We have $100 billion going to Ukraine, billions of dollars going to Israel. The message of anti-imperialists, what I've been warning Americans, is that we will continue to expand as an empire, overextend, spend too much on the military-industrial complex, and that will continue to buy us in the ass domestically. And I'm glad that more and more Americans are starting to wake up to it. Saying that they got what they deserved is fucked up, and that is absolutely the anti-material take. We lived in a rigged system where capitalists in the capitalist structure will have the candidate that they want, regardless of who the people vote for. Regardless if the people was opposed to the capitalist duopoly, the capitalist duopoly will still give what they want. So it's actually doing their bidding by dividing the workers and having us blame the worker for the failing of our government. So that's the best answer I have to that. But I'm telling you right now, there's no way I'm reacting to those videos. There's no way. Thank you for the 499, Janice. Federal fiscal year began October 1st. FEMA is lying. There's absolutely no way they blew through their entire year's budget in just 3 to 4 days. There's a lot of shady stuff going on, bro. There's black unmarked helicopters, Anyway, I gotta be careful because YouTube banning people for telling the truth. There's a lot of shady stuff that's going on regarding FEMA right now, man. Just 2 more quick super chats, and then we will continue. Ozzy, for putting up with this nonsense from these Zionist clowns and morally bankrupt losers. Exhausting, but we're getting closer to free Palestine each day. Well said. Thank you for the $5, Cat Terrell. Please speak on Hilton. Maybe eventually. Thank you for Sue Buck. Regarding, since it's Palestine Liberation Day, before October 7th, and we all know battles for liberations are will be bloody no matter what. Like, that's just the reality of fighting the brutal Western colonizer. But before October 7th, Palestinian statehood off the table. Now you have countries that are supportive of Palestinian statehood. Russia offered Palestine a spot in BRICS. Israel is least popular on the international stage than ever. You have settlers who fled the colonial project in Israel. You have Israel's economy in shambles. And this all started a year ago on October 7th. So that's a massive success, I think. Anyway, let's move on. I want to ask you about this. I want to get an update. I know you really well read and well researched on the Ukraine conflict, and I honestly been neglecting this over the last week or two. If I'm going to be 100% honest, so you probably have more fresher updates than I do. I'm going to read this headline. This is what the United States is doing instead of providing for their own people. Biden announces billions in Ukraine military aid as Zelensky visits the White House. And they also like just rubbing it in at this point. This is from Samantha Power. Look at this tweet. And I want you to respond very vague to this. Essentially, the United States still funding the Ukraine war, knowing that this shit is a dead end. So as Americans are struggling with and FEMA pretending they don't have enough with hurricane relief, here is Samantha Power bragging about how Americans are helping Ukraine keep the lights and the heat on despite Putin's attacks. I'm going to play this, and I'm going to ask for your general response.
I'm here in an energy substation in the western region of Ukraine. This substation provides enough power for around 500,000 residents of this area. I'm standing in front of an auto transformer that used to provide power, but that Putin's forces destroyed back in 2022. As we head into winter, knowing that Putin is intent on attacking critical infrastructure, USAID is doubling our investments in replacing auto transformers that have been damaged or destroyed, and in providing protection to the energy infrastructure that remains. Thanks to the support of the American people, USAID is working with Ukrainians to keep the lights on and the heat going this winter.
It's because of us. So don't you know all the people who are struggling as a result of Hurricane Helene? At least they will be relieved to know that their sacrifice is keeping Ukrainian energy on. So Ozzy, I'm going to pass it to you for any general thoughts on the United States' suicidal attempt of propping up the Ukrainian regime. Take it anywhere you want. I would love to hear from you.
Well, I would like to make an appeal to Americans, and especially those Americans who are in the path of the oncoming hurricanes. Dear Americans who are about to suffer from this Category 5 hurricane and that are suffering in states across America, my advice is raise Ukrainian flags on your houses, raise Ukrainian flags on your towns, raise Ukrainian flags on your cities, start singing Ukrainian songs, walk around wearing pajamas like Zelensky does. Yeah. Maybe then, finally, the American government might give you billions of dollars. The American military might send its best. NATO will come to your rescue. They'll send helicopters, the Air Force, because that seems to be the problem. It seems to be the fact that the American government is more interested in helping Zelensky, that criminal in Ukraine, the Nazi, than it is its own people. Unfortunately, look, it's really sad. It's a slap in the face to all of the Americans out there who are suffering as a result of these terrible hurricanes. It's going to get worse over the next few hours or the next few days with this mega new hurricane approaching the southern states and Florida. And by coincidence, that's a red state. It's a Trump state. And I mean, I would be very, very angry if I was an American. I mean, it angers me. I'm an Australian of Russian heritage, but it angers me to watch how...
Now you guys see why I'm unhinged. But go ahead.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, the worst thing is that these billions and billions of dollars that the United States is giving Zelensky, it's not even real money. They're giving debt, right? They're just giving more debt. It's not cash. It's not money that America has. And America's debt is growing. And every time they make an announcement, 300 billion or 10 billion or 50 billion or 20 billion, these aren't real numbers. This is just more debt and more debt. On the other hand, Russia, for example, is actually fighting a war with real money. It's funding its military with cash. So Russia is selling oil and selling gas, and it's using real money. It's not going into debt. When we think about who's losing the war, who's winning the war, well, who is losing the war? Is it the country that's able to afford a war and actually fight a war and produce its own missiles, produce its own tanks, and fight on its own? One country. Russia is one country up against 55 countries of NATO who are throwing everything they have at Russia, everything they've got, all the weapons stockpiles and supplies and all the billions of dollars are being flooded into there. And Russia is holding the line. It's amazing. Credit to the Russian government, the Russian people, and it was actually Vladimir Putin's birthday yesterday, on the 7th of October. So happy birthday to the president. And I think it's still the 7th of October in the United States. It's the 8th of October in Australia. So we can still say happy birthday to the Russian president. And it's holding the line. And look, Russia is a friend of all the free people out there. The free people in the United States who are against these globalists, who are against the duopoly, who are against Hollywood and Disneyland and Netflix and Coca-Cola and all of everything, all the filth that's
I like Russians
taking over the country. Really, America has been seized. And it's unfortunate, but I think that's why a lot of Americans who are free and free thinkers, who are awake, I think that's why they resonate with Russia, because they see that Russia's fighting and Russia's not part of all of these globalist alliances and World Economic Forums, and Russia has been pushed out of all of these organizations. And I think it's a great thing that Russia's not part of those organizations. So to all the Americans watching, Russia's your friend. Russia's not your enemy. The enemy that Russia has and you have is the same organization. It's the globalists who are our enemy. The free people of the world understand that. And it's the globalists who will rig this election in the United States. There's no doubt they will rig it or try to rig it. And I would be very, very surprised if Trump wins.
Last time I checked, the Atlantic slave trade did not go through Russia.
Never.
Last time I checked, there's not a colonial flag in Africa. But go ahead. I saw you want to go ahead.
Well, Nick, that's the thing. If you look at Africa now, you look at Niger, Kenya, Burkina Faso, Mali, all these countries, all across Africa, everywhere, people are carrying Russian flags all over the place. Why are they holding Russian flags? Because Russia is probably the only major power, the world power, that never exploited Africans. Russia never colonized Africa. Russia never, like the French. Look what the French did to the Africans. Look what the British did to the Africans. Exploitation, colonization. Look what the Americans did, the slave trade.
The Soviet Union used to spread anti-American propaganda where they used to highlight the plight of Black Americans during Jim Crow. And then white Americans say, well, they only did that because they wanted to make America look bad. I don't give a fuck why they did it. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. But they've been in the struggle with us. But continue your thought, Husky.
Absolutely. And Africa has an excellent and bright future. China is now investing heavily in Africa. Congratulations to the people of Niger who managed to finally get rid of the French. The French have been exploiting that part of the world for so long. Gold, uranium. I mean, these African countries should be very wealthy. But unfortunately, because they have been captured and occupied and colonized by these NATO powers, that hasn't happened. So that's why Russia is a friend to Africa. China is a friend to Africa. The good news is China has plenty of money as well. China has plenty of money, and China is investing that money into Africa. And Africa is turning away from NATO, turning away from the West, and turning to BRICS. And that's the difference with BRICS. BRICS is the future. BRICS is the 6 billion people are part of BRICS, right? The non-BRICS countries, the NATO countries, the G7 countries, this is only about 700 million people on the planet. It's a very small amount of the population.
Exactly.
And the world is evening out now. The world is catching up. It's becoming an even playing field. If before the G7 had the majority of the GDP and the majority of the world's wealth, well, now things are panning out in a different way. It's very clear that the future is places like Africa, places that were formerly developing and now they're in the future. At least they're not in debt. That's the thing. Russia's not in debt. America has no future because it cannot get out of these trillions and trillions of dollars that America has dug itself into a hole. It can never lose the debt. I mean, the only way that America can get out of this Ponzi scheme is if there's a great reset. And that's probably what they're going to do, probably what they're pushing for. And they'll use that as an excuse. And then they'll say, oh, we'll have to bring in Bitcoin or digital currency or something, and then they'll take over everything. The future is not bright for America. I'm sorry to say, but there's no light at the end of the tunnel, like there is for other countries. Other countries have hope. They're optimistic. There's something to work towards. I don't see what America has got going for it, really.
Yeah, I appreciate you being candid with us, because this is exactly what I've been warning about. It's either revolution or bust for America, guys. I tell you guys, I'm thinking about going to Brazil. I'm trying to get my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt.
Nick, I've heard so many Americans lately, so many American commentators and influencers talking on spaces and talking online and literally using those words, revolution, uprising, enough is enough. This is not just isolated incidents of some people saying these things. This is people have had enough in America. We can see it from here. We can see that Americans have had enough. And you know what? Who is running America at the moment? Who is in charge of the country? Can you answer that? I don't know who's in charge of the country. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
And look, it's pretty clear that these weak men like Biden have created hard times. Kamala is another weak person, and Elon Musk. Take this as a prediction. You can save this video. We'll come back to it in a few months or a few years. I'm pretty sure Elon Musk will be the vice president and then become the president eventually.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It could be bad. You can give me a reasons for why that's bad, but he's actually extremely powerful. Imagine he's now the guy, the one person, a private person who controls all of the United States military satellites going up into space. So the American government has to use him to get things into space, and everything is controlled by space. Satellites, internet, communications. Just how much power he has with X. He's got the #1 platform in the whole world. All the influence.
Military contracts, like it's so much. But go ahead.
This guy's going places, and it is a bit worrying, these sort of signs that he's dropping, saying, I am dark MAGA. I mean, that's really unsettling, right? That's not a good thing. And there's probably plenty of people out there who would agree with me that it's got these apocalyptic sort of vibes. And then Trump saying, Elon, take over. And Elon says, I'm dark MAGA. It's not good. What can I say?
The last thing I want to ask you about, it's always great to have you on, Ozzy Kosak. Always a lot of knowledge, and always great to get these updates from you. Definitely got to have you back on again for these little short, very enjoyable conversation. One more thing I want to ask you about, because we mentioned this a few times in the stream, and it's also back up the point that the global majority is pushing de-dollarization. BRICS is pushing de-dollarization. And I saw this is huge news, because Nigeria is one of the top 15 oil producers. And now they're officially ditching the United States dollar ahead of the BRICS summit, which is giant news. And that shows the sentiment in Africa regarding moving away from America. And to our conversation that we had earlier, there's so much to say there. But I said it many times before, it's the height of coonery. The height of coonery is to be a black man in America with Putin derangement syndrome. Like, you black in America, you don't like Xi Jinping? You black, like, why would you hate these people? You only hate these people because white Americans are telling you to hate these people. Now, Putin, this is one I want your thoughts on. I saw this story. You guys know, do my reading, and I was like, wow, this is big. Now, this is big, I think. Now, I always got to say this. I always got to rein in my excitement, because I don't want to hype up BRICS too much. Like, I'm just glad to see a resistance forming against United States hegemony. So I don't want to get blow smoke too much, but this seemed like big news. I don't know, man. This seemed like it was big, because look at this. Putin, during the BRICS summit, this is what this article is saying. Russia is planning on having like strict conditions for countries who seek applications with BRICS. Syria, many other these nations are seeking BRICS applications. And one of the new conditions that they're laying out is that you must resist United States sanctions. All new applicants for BRICS and people within the BRICS alliance must resist and defy, here it is, must defy sanctions against BRICS members and maintain sovereign policies. And this is apparently something they pushing big ahead of the summit. And I know that I like to hype things up a lot here on the channel, but it seemed like a big deal, doesn't it? Like that they're now formally saying that we got to oppose U.S. sanctions. Aussie Crusade, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, look, Russia has every right to counter sanctions. And although the sanctions sometimes are annoying, they've benefited Russia so much. The big problem that Russia had was that it relied on the US, it relied on the West. And Russia was always making billions and billions of dollars in oil and gas revenue. The problem was that they were being manipulated by the West, and the West was saying to Russia, invest your money in America, invest your money overseas. And now this has all stopped. So all of this money remains in Russia, which is one great thing about the sanctions. Now, the second thing about the sanctions is that it forced Russia to reach out to its partners in BRICS, China, India, Brazil, and actually make new payment systems and stop using the US dollar. So the sanctions against Russia was an own goal by the United States. If the United States were clever, they would have just allowed Russia to continue trading in US dollars and therefore supporting the US economy. And Russia and China are saying no, and it's becoming infectious. I mean, BRICS is infecting the world. Everyone is now joining BRICS and jumping on board, and this has all happened under Biden. This is Biden. If like, for example, if I was an American patriot, I would be filthy. I'd be so angry that we had lost everything. That this war between Russia and NATO in Ukraine, it's actually made Russia extremely strong. You know, before this war, Russia was just going, cruising along, easy, doing its thing, not worrying about anything. Now, because of this war, because NATO challenged Russia, Russian factories are working 24/7. Russia is producing more tanks, more missiles, more military stuff than it ever has since the days of the Soviet Union. Remember the days of the Cold War, Reds under the beds, and everyone was worried Russia's going to take over in the nuclear war. This is all coming back now because they've forced Russia to be great again. The Americans have forced Russia. Trust me, Russia didn't want to do this. Russia didn't want to get involved or didn't want to mobilize millions of its men. And now it has. And Russia has become extremely strong because it's one thing when you have a army on paper, when you have, well, we've got 1 million soldiers or we've got 10,000 tanks or whatever. But it's another thing completely when you actually have an army who is experienced, when you have 1.5 million men fighting on the front lines and they all know how to fight. And the way war is changing with drones and missiles, war is changing. And the most experienced now army in the world when it comes to dealing with drones, dealing with NATO weapons, dealing with Storm Shadows, dealing with HIMARS, dealing with ATACMS, dealing with everything that the Americans have, Abrams tanks, Leopard tanks. Guess which country has now the most experience in fighting NATO for real? Is Russia. And that's a big mistake because from a strategic perspective, you're supposed to keep all of these missiles and all of these tanks and all this technology. You're supposed to keep that so you have an element of surprise. So when a real war comes, the enemy doesn't know what to do. How do we shoot down a Storm Shadow? Russia literally has captured intact examples of US missiles, British missiles, French missiles, Taurus missiles, German missiles, and they've studied them. And guess what they do? As soon as they capture these missiles, they study them, they reverse engineer them, and then they give them to China and to Iran. And China and Iran also then study and reverse engineer them. So the whole Ukraine war has been a complete disaster for the West. All of these viral videos of US Abrams tanks being blown to smithereens, German Leopard tanks, British Challenger tanks, it's damaged the defense reputation of NATO so badly. Let's just face it, we all thought NATO was strong, right? A few years ago. Oh yeah, NATO strong, Abrams tanks strong, everything strong. Now that we see how it's all performing on the battlefield, people are starting to realize, well, maybe America is not that strong. America is strong when it's fighting against people who are wearing sandals and running around in the forest, right? That's when America's strong. But when America is coming up against a real enemy, a real formidable opponent, such as Russia or China, it's a completely different story. And the worst thing is for the Americans that Russia and China are closer than ever. We saw what happened when Vladimir Putin visited China. Russia and China said, we're closer than brothers, we're closer than allies. And China knows that it's got to back Russia. And you know what? China hasn't even started backing Russia yet. The manufacturing potential of China, when they're using 10,000, 20,000 drones just for doing light shows, recreational purposes. Most countries in the world don't have that many drones in their military. And this is just China doing some light festival in Guangzhou or something,
That's a good point.
eating some Chinese food and watching drones fly around. This is China flaunting how powerful it is. If China wanted to, they could allocate 10,000 factories to create drones and missiles 24/7 if they wanted to. It's extremely strong, extremely strong. And all of these actions are having a reverse effect. It's an own goal by the Biden administration. They're making Russia great again. The best thing they should have done was just allowed Russia to complete its special military operation in Ukraine. We can all see, even Russia's enemies acknowledge and realize that Russia is not trying to kill Ukrainians. You can see how Israel attacks Gaza. Israel attacks Palestine. Just flatten everything, bomb everything. Women, children, doesn't matter. See you later. See you later. All gone. But look how Russia is fighting Ukraine. House to house, building to building, basement to basement. They're trying to preserve Ukrainians because Russia always looks at Ukrainians as their own. It's our people. It's one people. They're both Christian. They're both Orthodox. They're both part of the same ethnicity, the same gene pool. They have been for 1,000 years. And this whole conflict was all created by the Americans. They thought they could make trouble for Russia. Yes, it was a little bit of trouble, but now Russia has got into the rhythm of things. Now the question is, how do you stop Russia, right? It's easy for Russia to mobilize, but it's very hard for Russia to demobilize. And that's the question that the American government can't answer. How do they stop Russia from producing missiles and from arming itself more? They've created a monster. There you go. Let's just admit it. Russia is extremely strong. Congratulations, Biden. This is what you wanted. This is what you got. So I think Trump will win. Putin and Trump will sort it out. And I really hope the world can have peace. So everybody can go back to putting selfies of their lunch on Twitter instead of talking about World War III and nuclear weapons. It would be much nicer, much greater for the whole world to worry about making money, paying debt off, which is a lot of Western countries have a big problem with that at the moment, and living peacefully and coexisting. And let's get all these Russian channels back on YouTube. I mean, my channel, Aussie Cossack channel, is a great channel on YouTube, 170,000 subscribers. I was taken out as well on YouTube. How many people have been cancelled off YouTube? It's terrible. So it's a pleasure to be with you on YouTube. Thank you for giving us the, what would you say? You're countering sanctions by appearing on the Revolutionary Blackout Network.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Your perspective is definitely much appreciated, and your analysis regarding Russia defeated U.S. sanctions is exactly what we bring up on RBN. Putin, no matter what you guys feel about him, is probably one of the most accomplished leaders of our lifetime. Like, you guys realize that the time that Putin took power, Russia was a struggling, broke country that no one respected. Now they're a top 5 fucking superpower, and that all happened under Putin and because of the missteps of the neocons in the West. But we definitely got to talk about it some more some other time. It's great to have you on. Anything you want to shout out? I know YouTube been giving you trouble. Where can people find you, Ozzy Cossack, if they want some more analysis? What's any last things you want to plug or promote before you?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, look, I'm not on YouTube anymore, but I am on Twitter. Aussie Cossack is the handle, as you can see. Right there, or right there, should I say? There you go. So thanks for that, and thanks to your great audience, and it's been a pleasure joining you. Look forward to chatting with you again.
Yeah, here's Ozzy Cossack's Twitter account. Make sure you follow him for great geopolitical analysis. Tomorrow, I'll tell you, this week just got started. We had a banger today with Ozzy Cossack. Tomorrow, bro, we got Nico House, my hotspot brother, join me. We got Philorella Isabel, who also extremely banned and censored on YouTube. We're gonna get in trouble, man. I promise you. We got a double header. So not only we have me, Nico, and Fiorella talking about the situation in between Israel and Iran. Later that night, we're gonna have me, JB, and Mark Kimberly. 2 streams in one day. 2 streams. We're gonna talk about Syria. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to discuss. So we got bang after banger on the channel. Make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you guys follow my guests as well. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Peace out.